Hello and welcome to the final episode of the year 2022. Hey, I got that right. I do want to remind you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, contact us at onecard1cup1beer@gmail.com. Next week, we are going to introduce Patreon. I know you were just sitting on the edge of your seat saying, how can we help support this podcast, this web channel? Well, here's your chance. We're going to also introduce some merch and ways that you could participate in the show. And also, if you're watching on Mac or PC, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see our logo. It is kind of faint, but click on that and you could subscribe to the YouTube channel so you will not miss one beat. We have special guests today. We have my son, Maxwell Opper, who's going to be with us. And we also have Mr. Tom Cook. We're going to interview Tom, who has a podcast called The Worst Fans in Baseball. Max, how are you doing today?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yep, that's about it.
Did you have a good Christmas?
I had a wonderful Christmas.
Look what I'm wearing. Check this out.
Oh,
Hey, there
I
it
love
is.
it. I love it.
Thank you. That was my present from Max. I do appreciate that. It is true. I am suffering from baseball withdrawal. I've been quite frank with people on how I suffered this time of year. Excuse me. So, JJ, what's up with you?
Well, I want to wish everybody, I hope everybody had a good Christmas, and we got New Year's coming up. Be safe out there. I have to, you shared your shirt. This is the shirt, one of the shirts I got for Christmas. I got the last stand right there with Wainwright, Pujols, and Yachty walking off the field and the arch in the background. Love that.
Nice.
And man, with the holidays, it's been quiet in Cardinalville. Few things I've looked up. I've done a lot of research just to find something, but evidently Tyler O'Neill is in St. Louis, and he's working on stretching and elasticity because he's a big muscle guy and he always ends up getting hurt. So this year he's starting his offseason really early, getting ready for the spring training coming up. Also heard that Paul DeYoung is down there at Jupiter already at the car facility, getting ready for the season. And he's had a couple of years, really down years. So I hope he bounces back. I think we got one more year in his contract. I'm sure he's going to play some shortstop. I hope he kind of regains what he used to have. We'll see. Anyway, we got him for another year. We'll see what happens. I'm glad he's out there working. And it's already the winter to me, because we're baseball fans, it's November, December, January, February. Around Valentine's Day, everybody shows up for spring training. And the Cardinals only have 2.5 weeks before we have our winter warm-up, which is kind of like starting to happen, starting to get there slowly but surely. I'm not going to go, but I know I have a lot of friends that are going to go. And I think most of the Cardinals will be there. And then we have a little treat earlier this year. We got the World Baseball Classic. And I think that's pretty important for the Cardinals and the Cubs because we both have a lot of young players that are vying for positions on the team. And with the World Baseball Classic, I know the Cardinals are sending quite a few players to play on some of the other teams. And we're going to get a long look at some of the young players in spring training. And I'm pretty excited about that. Jordan Walker and the young shortstop, and some of our young pitchers. And they could play a big part of the upcoming season. And let's see. Oh, we got a friend that listens to the show every week. He's a good guy. He had an accident on the ice and
we
broke
have
his
a
leg.
friend.
We have one fan I know of out there. Troy Lou, a good friend. He had an accident on the ice and broke his leg, and he went back and listened to every one of our episodes. So
wow.
he called me today and he said, "Hey, I'm going to listen to you guys tonight." And I said, "Well, it'll be out soon. Just hang on." So anyway, Troy, we hope you have a speedy recovery. And hey, we're building the fandom right there. We're building the fandom, Vince. And that's all I have.
I remember in the late 80s when this is when nutrition was really starting to catch on in Major League Baseball. Whitey Herzog pushed back on that. because there were a lot of pulled muscles. There was a lot of people on the disabled list, and he did not agree that you should have a muscle-bound body for baseball. He believed it was detrimental because you were going to pull your muscles because you had more muscles. And his advice was that these players, instead of going to the gym, should skip the gym every now and then and go have a hot dog and a beer. So maybe that's what Mr. O'Neill should do.
He's muscle bound. He's a big
gosh,
muscle bound guy.
He's a freak.
He is, and I just think if he could just meet the ball, he'll hit a lot of home runs. He doesn't have to kill it, and he's always pulling a hammy or a groin injury. No, I'm sorry, I even laughed on that, but running into a wall. I mean, he plays all out, and I would like to see what he could do with a healthy year. I'm kind of excited about that. Hopefully so.
Well, in Cub news, we have been for the week of Christmas pretty busy. We signed Tucker Barnhart, 2 years, $6.5 million for a backup catcher who last year had 1 home run, a .221 batting average, a .554 OPS, and a negative -0.2 WAR. Of all the catchers, I shouldn't say all, of all the viable catchers that we could have chose from, this is the last guy I wanted. He is not the guy who was catching for the Reds winning Gold Gloves. He's not near that anymore. He is a complete shell of himself, and we just crapped away $6.5 million. Max, am I wrong?
I don't think you're entirely wrong. I think it's worth noting that of just about every single position player who played for Detroit this year kind of just sucked. You look at Javi Baez, you look at guys that who's their third, Heiber Candelario, all those guys,
Candelario, yeah.
year. And I don't know if that's just because of the ballpark or what, but I don't know. I think his offensive struggles, that can probably be chalked up a little bit to that. Catching wise, his framing metrics have gotten a lot better, and he's actually very adept at throwing out base stealers, which is going to be really important this year with the bigger bases. So I can't hate the signing. Obviously, you'd prefer like a Sean Murphy or Wilson Contreras, but I'm fine with it.
Well, it just bothered me. We got outbid for catchers, and this is what we have for a backup. And I know Ross is building the catching position in his image. He defense first, take care of the pitchers. If you have any offense from this position, that's a bonus. Okay, I can buy that, but to get a guy with a negative WAR, with a .554 OPS, who's probably going to catch 60 to 70 games, that's a real hole in the lineup. So
yeah.
We also signed Drew Smiley, 2 years, $19 million. And Drew pitched for us last year. He was 7-8. He had a 3.47 ERA in 22 starts. We had him, I think it was 2018 or 19. I don't remember which, when he was recovering from Tommy John surgery. So we were paying his bills while he was rehabbing. And then I don't remember if we traded him to Texas or if we DFA'd him or free agent. I don't remember what happened, but anyway, he came back last year and he had a decent year when he was healthy. He pitched really good for us. So that's another piece we can put in our starting rotation. We have also claimed Anthony Kay off waivers, who has a career 5.5 ERA. He throws really hard, but walks have always been an issue with him. So I think the theory is if we can put him in the pitch lab and harness some of that control, he could be a piece for us. We still are in need of a third baseman, and we are in need of a left-handed power hitter. Michael Conforto was on the market, and now he's gone, and I really don't think there's a whole lot left with third baseman. I don't know if we needed another outfielder with that kind of pedigree. I'm okay with Morel spelling the outfield spots and spelling third base. But I really would like to see us do something with third base, because it scares me to death to have Patrick Wisdom over there. the way he played defense last year. I'd rather see him at first base and DH and pinch hit. But we do need somewhere to find a little more left-handed power. Our left-handed hitters, do have some power. Hap has some power from the left side. He's a switch hitter. Bellinger, if he's right, he's going to have a lot of thump. And Mervis is power hitting left-hander. We have him first. But other than that, we're pretty much thick with right-handers. So we'll see what shakes loose the next few weeks as far as the Cubs go for a left-handed bat and a third baseman. And joining us in the room is Mr. Tom Cook. Tom is the host of the Worst Fans in Baseball podcast with Ryan and Josh. Tom's been a friend of mine for a few years. He is a history aficionado. He is a Cardinal super fan. He is a stand-up comedian, all-around great guy. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing exceptional, Vincent. It's so nice to be on here to join the One Cardinal, One Cub, One Beer podcast.
You have made it now. You've made it now. So we asked this question of every one of our first guests. Tell us how you became a Cardinal fan.
My favorite player growing up was Gary Gaetti.
From Centralia.
Yeah. When I was a kid, because my parents, my dad was a huge Cardinals fan. And I was like, that Gary Gaetti seems cool. But after 1996, he wasn't so cool. My dad really hated Gary Gaetti. And I'm like, does that mean you hate a little bit of me? And he's like, I really just hate Gary Gaetti. And this is where we're at. That's how I guess it's my introduction to it. They're just the team nearby, so that's why I picked them. And then it's just been an addiction ever since, I guess. Just watching this team every year.
Mm-mm-mm.
How old were you when you had this infatuation with Gary Gaetti?
I don't know, like 5-6 years old. It's just like you kind of pick a guy out, and then you're like, yo, that's my guy. That's my favorite player. And then my dad like, why? He sucks. I'm like, oh, he's not that good. I'm like, I got it the first time. He's like, he's really terrible. We're gonna trade him to the Cubs.
Yeah, I was gonna say we even got a worse version of him. So who are Ryan and Josh? I don't know these two co-hosts you have.
Well, there's a third. Nick has come back, our beautiful bouncing baby Italian boy. So the podcast is mainly Nick's idea. He hit me up with it about last year when I was going through a breakup, and I think he only did it to make sure I didn't kill myself. And then after, you'll have to bleep it, it's YouTube, so I had at least one dump in. But he started it last year, and then Josh joined, and then Ryan joined. You know who Ryan is, but we cannot disclose his identity because if his job found out about this podcast, they would fire him. But Josh, he works for the city of Cape, and so I'll happily dox my roommate. Josh is my roommate.
I've got Ryan whittled down to about 2 people. So
yeah, you can probably take a wag at who it is. Josh joined up about 20-30 episodes in as our third guy, and then we added Ryan when Nick has a little gay synth band, as we call it. He has a neat little 80s synth band that he does, and he went off to go make a couple albums with that. And while he did that, we decided to add Ryan as our fourth, and lo and behold, the Worst Fans was born. Here we are.
Well, Tom, Vince sent me your podcast. I listened to it for the first time over the weekend. Yeah, and I tell you what, I really enjoyed it, but you guys come fast and furious. Not only is it baseball, it's history. And I was wondering, is this all just free association? Is there some editing involved? Because I'm impressed. I'm a pretty fast talker, and I think I kind of get riled up, but you guys I can't keep up with you guys.
How would I describe it? For those listening to this podcast who like it, Uh, what I compare your podcast is like sitting down with a relative you like and talking baseball. And the way I look at it with ours is sitting down with a relative you hate and talking about anything. So, uh, if you're listening to this and you like, we do like an hour and a half long podcast, and 10 minutes of it sometimes is baseball. And I want you all to know who listen to this podcast, if you're really going to listen to it, it's incredibly left wing. It is incredibly vulgar, and it's hardly about baseball sometimes. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we did an episode after the winter meetings called entirely a baseball episode, where it's like it's a comedy baseball podcast is mainly what it's situated as. There is not a lot of structuring in it. Like we have like a group message that hopefully the FBI never gets a hold of, but like it's just like, hey, what do you guys want to talk about tonight? We'll be like, let's make fun of Carlos Correa, because it's never like we want to talk about this and like, oh hey, is this collusion against him? Is he up for a big payday? Why is now this physical suddenly a concern? It's like, let's make fun of Mets fans because they're pond scum, and like they totally jumped at this guy, and all of a sudden their doctors are telling them that they can't sign this dude. It's just backed by some vitriol. There's some good baseball analysis in it, I think, but yeah, I mean, it's more free association. It's a lot of wheeling and dealing.
That's fine.
Well, I love the podcast, and it's definitely listener discretion advised. I'll put it that way. The way
Yeah,
you weave history, shtick, snark, politics, baseball, and any other topic that hits your mind is so entertaining. But I do want to stress the baseball that you do talk about, it's not like we're just talking out the sides of our mouths. You are very baseball intelligent. So when you do hit the topics of baseball, you've all done your homework. You look up the stats. You're like Maxwell. You're more of a stat geek with the Saber information.
Saber
So
metrics.
that's really cool.
That's that new generation stuff.
Yeah, you youngsters, But now, what I really want to talk about, I listened this week to the 1982 season, which I enjoy your podcast, but this really took it up a level. And so I do implore people, if you want to listen to a podcast that is about baseball for the whole time, that really encapsulates not just what is going on with the Cardinals in the 82 season, but what's going on in the world, the backdrop behind the 82 season. I think it's wonderful. And I hope you get 1 million people to listen to this. So tell us about how you came up with this concept to do the 1982 season in a series of podcasts within the Worst Fans in Baseball.
Yeah, it started with, we did an episode earlier in the season where Josh says we should do something that isn't just us riffing about like what stupid meme we saw on Twitter, or like what or what dumb thing our girlfriends did or something. I'm like, okay, like what do you got? And we've always discussed, I think, that our strength with our podcast, and that what we get a lot of feedback on, is that it's not always about baseball. And so we're like, okay, well, we don't have to make it like, we don't have to do like a deep dive into who's got the highest exit velocity in the National League. I mean, we could probably do something more obscure. And Josh proposed we talk about Khalil Green. And Khalil Green is an interesting guy. He's a hermit now.
Yes.
Baseball was a lot for him. He is like arguably the best collegiate baseball player, especially at his time, in terms of like raw power and athleticism. And then while he had like one really promising year with the Padres, he completely went and lived off the grid after that. And like we found like a report by like Bob Raines, who tried his best to track him down and do an interview with him. And we made some jokes about it, but like at the heart of it, it's like, okay, here's something that's like not us reflecting on like some latest John Boy craze, or griping about robo umps, or how Nolan Arenado is way better than Jose Ramirez or anything like that. And so we kind of thought about it, and then Nick set up a YouTube page for us to stream on. We're not active on it, so just we have a website you can read our stuff on. We have a podcast, so you check that out. The other stuff's kind of a waste at the moment. But I have the idea because my favorite content creators out there that I listen on YouTube is a guy named John Boyes. He works for Secret Base. He has a series he does with Alex Rubenstein called Dorktown, and it's basically an overloading of just charts and information, but it's utilized in a way that tells a very empathetic story. It's a very humane treatment of like sports and the people that participate in it. Like, I highly recommend, after you guys get done with this, like one of the last episodes that they did on Dorktown was about Steve Jeltz, of all people, our hero of our story, and how the Philadelphia Phillies are the only team to come back from a 10-0 deficit in the first inning and win. Like, it's stuff like that. And I've always kind of had a hankering to want to create something like that. And so we got to talking about it, and Josh says, what if we did like a series like on Cardinals teams? And I'm like, sure, what do you got in mind? He's like, let's do World Series winners. And Ryan said World Series winners is a great place to start. And so I had been working on a couple of pieces, just one of them is called the many wins of Adam Wainwright, which I have I'm up to about 50 wins right now, just the history of every single one of his wins, and what they've kind of mattered to. And the other one was a Paul Goldschmidt piece that I told my friends about. All that said, I said, all right, well, we can, we have all that down. Why not? Let's pick a year. So we're like, okay, let's go with 1982. Completely random. I wish I could say there was like a method to the madness, but they're like, let's go with the 80s. Let's go with the 82 series winning team. And that's how it kind of came born. It took us about 3 months to write the first episode, and I'm sure it will take us 2 or 3 months to finish researching and writing the second episode. If you guys like this, and folks, if you ever want to do something like this, I want you to know it sucks. You have to read so much. It's you have to. I bought a book from like Whitey Herzog. It is gruesome. I have like a subscription to newspapers.com, so I can look at, thank God the Post-Dispatch is on there for basically every single article they have. But I combed through hundreds of issues just to get all the information that we had necessary up for like episode 1. And right now I've only made it about to halfway through June in terms of box scores and storylines. Right now there's just a litany of information that comes from it, but that's the origins of it. We just picked it. We're like, let's do 82. Whitey Herzog. Cocaine. They did a lot of drugs. The team had a lot of guys doing drugs. It's really cool. Yeah.
Well, before JJ jumps in here, being a Cub fan, I did not experience a World Series until just a few years ago. So my first real experience with a World Series winner was the 82 Cardinals, because I lived 20 minutes from the stadium. So being caught up in all that was something that was neat. I didn't look at it like, gosh, I hope the Cardinals lose. I looked at it like, wow, this is really cool. I can't wait for the Cubs to do this. Well, I had to wait for the Cubs to do it. I had to wait a long time.
They did it in your lifetime. Most people died before they saw him win another World Series.
My grandfather died the year before. Just terrible. So, JJ, go ahead and jump in here, because I know you love the 82 team.
Oh, I'll mention that in a minute, but I appreciate your podcast, because as a baseball fan and a Cardinal fan, you can go down a rabbit hole, and there's just one thing leads to another. And just listening to your podcast, I try to keep up with everything. There's just no way. And there's so many things you went over and touched on that I kind of forgot about. Like Kilian Green, I kind of forgot about him. If somebody mentioned him, I'd remember the name, but I hadn't thought about him in years. Mm-hmm. And the 82 team, in my lifetime, that was our first playoffs or anything. And I was a junior in high school. I didn't ask my parents. I only had enough money for 2 bleacher tickets, and I hitchhiked at Busch Stadium. Went up there on a Wednesday, and the tickets didn't go sell Saturday, and I had $1 to eat and drink on, and I drank 2 sodas from Wednesday to Saturday. But I got front row bleacher seats, and then the Cardinals lose game 1, 10-0 to the Brewers.
You've been to some games. It sounds like, JJ. Can you confirm this? Because Ryan's locked in a debate with a family member over this. Could you take kegs into Busch Stadium and just drink them in the bleachers?
It was if so, it was before my time, and I started going to the games in '76.
Yeah. No. This is around the time Ryan's having this debate with this relative over. He told us about it. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He said you could take kegs into the bleachers and drink them. I'm like, I don't know, man. The 80s and 70s were pretty wild. I don't think they were that wild. I mean,
there'd be somebody throwing them on the field. I think you can take a plastic unopened soda or water, and that's it. No aluminum, no metal. I don't think so. Anything like that.
Interesting you bring up like all the weird stuff that happens in a season, because it's all like it's all like microorganisms that kind of just create this body that becomes like a story that you'll tell per se. But the one I found so far that was really funny to me is our like basically third string catcher Glenn Brummer in '82 stole home on a walk-off out of nowhere. Just Glenn Brummer.
Right there on my notes, I was going to bring that up to you.
Yeah, he played like 60 games. He's like, I'm going for it. I can just imagine the conversation. Like people like, what is he doing? Is he going to steal home? Like, what's this guy doing? Like, why didn't he give him a signal? He just did it. Extra inning game. Glenn Brummer's like, we're going Sizzler, and he just took home plate on it.
He did tell the third base coach, he's not even looking at me.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just stole home, which to me, that was the fulcrum that showed, yeah, we're going to go all the way.
It's such a Chad move, man, especially from a catcher. A catcher to steal a base like at any point is like is like an insult. But for a catcher to like snipe home, especially a guy like Glenn Brummer, who looks like he should be like at the time like a TV salesman or something. Like a guy, he looks like a PE teacher, and for him to like swipe that on you, a guy whose helmet doesn't fit him, like it's bad. Have you seen pictures of Glenn Brummer wearing a batting helmet?
He looks like a guy named Glenn Brummer.
Yeah, he does. He looks like a fat kid wearing a little kid's hat. That's what he looks like. He's the ultimate guy. All right. Him, yeah, like Tito Landrum, and of course like Tom Lawless in later years. It's the whole season's wacky. Whitey Herzog in itself, we're still like deciding like who's the main characters we're gonna do. And when we're setting this aside, we're like, well, we should do Lonnie Smith, because Lonnie Smith is very interesting. He had a pretty bad falling out with Philadelphia, and he was the MVP runner-up in '82. Willie McGee, obviously, he was picked up in a trade with the Yankees for, I think it was Bob Shirley. He was traded.
Bob Sykes.
Bob Sykes, thank you. Bob Sykes, who was traded too. And then he just comes up after a series of injuries. The whole team was kind of mangled the first like month of the season, but he just kind of comes up, wins over the starting job, and becomes Willie McGee as we know him today. Joaquin Andujar, because he's good for like quotes, he's insane. Keith Hernandez, I know it's a PG podcast, but Keith Hernandez is a prickly pear because he has no problem throwing guys under the bus to the media. Like players and managers don't talk smack to the media like they did back in the day. They would just say like, that guy's trash. My favorite was it was like in '81. I was reading an article. It was about Andy Rincon. It was kind of a touted young arm that the Cardinals had, but he kept getting hurt. And Keith Hernandez basically came out and said he was too fat. He's like, he's hurt because he's out of shape and he's too fat. I'm like, what are you doing, you psychopath? Like, why are you telling Rick Hummel this? What is wrong with you? You could have been like, Andy, he's got his struggles. That would be the normal thing to say. He's like, nah, he's too fat. Like, what is wrong? What are you doing? 600. He making like 650,000 a year. He's like, this rookie, he's a jelly belly. He can't take care of himself. This is insane to me. I love it. I love it. It's a really fun project right now. It's hilarious. Whitey Herzog's a god. That's all I can say. He's wacky.
Amen.
He's an absolute wacky guy. Very endearing.
Do you know how many episodes this is going to take to complete the season, or are you just going to go till it's done?
We can really kind of milk it for as long as we did. The first episode outline I had when I started writing the script was about like a page and a half, like just like a typical outline, and just like what I had in mind. And then I had planned when I initially wrote episode 1 for us to lead into, okay, so now we can go into the season. But Whitey Herzog is just took over, man. It's the spirit, like it's the Holy Spirit that took over, and he dominated like the 7,000 word script because it's just so much. We're hoping that episode 2 kind of sets the rest of the tone for one. It's got to talk about the GM moves that the Cardinals make, because Herzog takes over from John Claiborne, who was they were friends coming as far back as when they worked in the Mets organization. He takes over for John Claiborne following the 79 season. Whitey begins trading, or sorry, the 80 season, my bad, 1980 season. Whitey begins trading away every single person known to man and building the team that he wants. And then by April 82, Whitey relinquishes the GM reins. But we have to talk about that year and a half, those 2 winter meetings he went in, shopping around guys, picking, we had Raleigh fingers for a couple days, but he's like, I'm only keeping Raleigh because I really want Bruce Sutter. That's all. I'm only in it for the Sutter, baby. He traded away Ted Simmons for like David Green, and then David Green kind of became a bust. But I mean, thank God Gary Templeton grabbed his junk on ladies' night, and then we finally, he went in and traded and got Ozzie Smith eventually. Whitey made trades like a video game is what he did. Like it was how someone would run a team on PlayStation. He just was completely unhinged with it. It was awesome. It's awesome. That's all I can tell people. He's
exciting times.
Wacky guy.
Well, we do need to wrap this up. Tom, I want people to know they can find your podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, because I found it on a few different platforms. So I do implore you, check out his podcast, but specifically episode number 99 would be a good place to, if you're really into the history of the St. Louis Cardinals, listen to that first episode and you are going to get hooked. So JJ, you got anything to add? I see Max has muted himself, so he's probably
it was
sleeping.
nice. It was nice meeting you, and man, I stand in awe of your knowledge of the 82 season, my man.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. So
thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
And we'll see you around someday, okay?
Hell yeah. Take care,
All
guys.
right.
Love you.
Take care. Being this is our year-end episode, what we are going to do is we are going to look at the 2022 season, and we're going to start with the off season last year. And I'm going to talk about the off season. JJ is going to talk about the season, and Max is going to finish up with the postseason. So if you think back to the Atlanta Braves spraying champagne, dancing around the World Series trophy, bringing the championship back to Atlanta for the first time since, was it 95? So it's been a while. Great feel-good story. Freddie Freeman, class act. He gets his World Series championship in his team he grew up with. So immediately after that, things started happening business-wise, and the biggest problem was that the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, which is a contract that players have with ownership, and that kind of sets how their business relationship is going to be, pay scale, just about everything you can imagine. And there's a lot of give and take there. Okay, the players, they want maybe more money for a minimum salary for rookies. Okay, then the owners say, okay, we'll give you that, but we want such and such, and there's a lot of give and take. Well, they were miles apart. And I know this is only about 1.5 feet, but act like it's this is New York and this is Paris. Okay, that's how far apart they were. So they had this collective bargaining agreement that needed to be settled. So what they did is they could see that they were so far apart, there was going to be a lockout. A lockout is not a strike. A lockout comes from the ownership side where they say, okay, we're going to lock the doors. You can't come into the facilities. You can't use anything that's Major League Baseball. And it's a way to force a hand in bargaining. So there was going to be a lockout. So usually in the off season, big free agent signings and trades, they kind of take a while to kind of get going. So you don't see a whole lot of movement early. Wasn't the case because they saw this lockout coming. Players and general managers and agents were negotiating at an alarming rate. And there was a lot of action that happened in November for about a 2-week stretch from November until the time of the lockout. Just to give you an example, talking about the big money people. November 16th, Noah Syndergaard goes to the Angels, 1 year, $21 million for a pitcher who's been nothing but hurt for the last few years. November 24th, the Cardinals jumped in and they got Steven Matz, 4 years, $44 million. November 27th, Michael Wacha went to the Red Sox, 1 year, $7 million, and he earned that $7 million this year, had a very good year. November 27th, Starling Marte, Mark Canha, and Eduardo Escobar go to the Mets, and their salaries equal $124 million. So the Mets really started this spending spree that you see this year, kind of last year. November 28th, Avisal Garcia goes to the Mariners, 4 years, $53 million. November 28th, Kevin Gausman went to the Blue Jays, 5 years, $110 million. November 28th, Marcus Semien goes to the Rangers, 7 years for $175 million. November 29th, Max Scherzer, who is at the twilight of his career, signed for 3 years, $130 million. It's over $40 million a year. Max Scherzer is doing pretty good for a St. Louis boy. November 29th, Robbie Ray goes to the Mariners, 5 years, $115 million. So November 29th, Corey Seager goes to the Rangers, 10 years, $325 million. November 30th, Javi Baez goes to the Tigers, and he steals 6 years for $140 million. One of the weirdest things, and I thought I'd add it because it is timely, it's in the news today. December 1st of last year, the Red Sox traded Hunter Renfroe to the Brewers for Jackie Bradley Jr. Hunter Renfroe had a really good year for the Red Sox. Jackie Bradley Jr. cannot hit 200 anymore. Still a decent defensive outfielder. Why did the Red Sox trade Hunter Renfroe away for Jackie Bradley Jr., who had previously played for the Red Sox? Well, it's come out that nobody likes Hunter Renfroe. Nobody. His teammates don't like him. He's a cancer in the clubhouse, and he's got some problems with racism. So that was interesting. And on December 1st, Marcus Stroman goes to the Cubs, 3 years for $71 million. Then December 2nd, the lockout starts. So we have nothing going on. And we were hoping, baseball fans were hoping, as the closer we get to spring training, that will force both sides to the table, and they will come up with an agreement, and we'll have spring training in the season. Guess what happened? In February, pitchers and catchers did not report because the lockout was still going on. So March 1st, Major League Baseball, the commissioner, Rob Manfred, announces that the first 2 series of the season are going to be canceled. So that's about the first week of the season. Now that was serious news. Oh my gosh, the first 2 weeks of the season are going to be canceled. 9 days later, on March 10th, the birthday of my mother, by the way. The players and ownership got together and they signed a new CBA for the next 5 years. So we had a 3.5-week spring training. Instead of starting the season the last day of March, we started it April 2nd or April 7th. So, and then Rob Manfred came out and said, psych, we're not going to cancel the first 2 series. We're just going to cram everything together and extend the season a little bit. So we did get the full 162 games in. I was happy. I think all baseball fans were happy. This could have been a disaster if it would have lingered and we would have lost games. Those of us who lived through the 1981 strike and the 1994 strike realized how devastating a lockout or a strike is to baseball. I should say the 94 was a lockout and 81 was a strike, if my memory serves me right. So after they signed the CBA, the rest of the players who hadn't signed yet started signing. Freddie Freeman goes to the Dodgers, 6 years, $162 million. Chris Bryant steals money from the Rockies, 7 years, $182 million. Seiya Suzuki comes to the Cubs, 5 years, $85 million. Yay. Kyle Schwarber goes to the Mets, 4 years, $80 million. That worked out really good for Mr. Schwarber. Anthony Rizzo goes to the Yankees, 2 years, $32 million. People say, well, wait a minute. He only played 1 year, and then he was a free agent again. Second year is an option for Rizzo, and that's with some of these contracts. The Mariners got Eugenio Suarez, or as I like to say, Eugenio Suarez. Sounds like a Don Juan type guy. And Jesse Winker from the Reds helped solidify them into a playoff team. The Braves traded for Matt Olson from the Athletics to take the place of Freddie Freeman. The Twins traded and got Sonny Gray from the Reds. So there was a lot of not just free agent, there was trades happening at this time. Clayton Kershaw re-signed with the Dodgers, 1 year, $17 million. Carlos Rodon went to the Giants, 2 years, $44 million. Second year was an option. That's why he's a free agent again. And Carlos Correa, who said, dadgummit, my leg is fine. Give me 3 years, $105 million with an opt-out after the first year. The Twins said, yes, we will do that. So the Twins gave him that. So that was the offseason. A lot of excitement, kind of a different offseason. And I like this offseason. I wish they would impose, okay, by December 1st, you have your free agent signed, and then we're going to freeze signings from December 1st until spring training starts. I like that because it creates a lot of buzz right after the World Series, and these players have to get signed, kind of how the NBA does it. And then if they don't get signed by that date, wait till spring training. I wish baseball would adopt that, but I'm probably not going to be the next commissioner. So, JJ, what happened during this wonderful season?
Well, like you said, it was so important to get the whole season in, because if we didn't get 162 games in, Aaron Judge wouldn't have hit 62. He wouldn't have even had a shot at it. Albert wouldn't have got 700 home runs. I mean, the season, it fit in there. If they had 2 weeks off the season, I don't think Albert would have got 700, and I don't think Judge would have hit 62. So it's very important that you play those 162 games, the continuity of each season that goes by. I know Max is going to do the postseason, and there's a couple things I want to touch on so bad, but what I'm going to do is just hit the highlights, hit the headlines, and you guys can jump in. I'll ask you some questions, but this is going to be kind of fun. Now, the Astros are a story in themselves, but I want to tell you something. There was something that never happened in baseball this year, and it has to do with the World Series game. I know we had a no-hitter in the World Series, but the game before, there was an umpire, and his name was, I've got it written down here.
Is it Pat Hoberg?
Yes. I'll let you cover that then. I
don't know too much about it. It was either a perfect game or very close to it. I do remember that.
A perfect game. For 7 years now, they've had that box, and each umpire gets graded by the percentage of correct balls and strikes. And I mean, did the batter go all the way around? Was it a check swing? Was it a strike? A lot of borderline pitches. And he called a perfect game. Over 100 pitches, or over 200 pitches total, and he's the only umpire that was 100% accurate over the last 7 years in a game. That's pretty amazing, you know. If you miss one, you're out.
Step up and do that.
Yeah. So I know they're grading the umpires. They're trying to do a better job with the umpiring, And I think that's great. And with these automatic strike zones coming, it looks like, you know, just to get it right. That's the main thing. Well, I'm going to do some of the headlines now. And I'm going to go the Phillies, the Philadelphia Phillies, a star-studded team. They had Joe Girardi, who we both love. He was a great Cub. He was played on the Cardinals for a season. He
Great
was a
broadcaster.
Yeah, he he went. The Phillies went 21-29 through their first 50 games, and Joe Girardi ends up getting fired. And they bring in Rob Thompson, and for the rest of the season, they go 65-46 and make the and get in the playoffs. Probably the year before they wouldn't have made the playoffs. They were like the last team to get in. So what a story that was. Did you guys like the new playoff format where they got more teams and more rounds, and instead of a 1-game playoff, you got a 3-game series? Did you like that? Or I enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it. While doing research for my little segment, I was looking at all the wild card series. There were some classics there. I'll touch on those later, but there were some really good games.
Very good series. Yes.
Just the nature of baseball, one and done. Yeah. That's football. Baseball is, that's why it's a longer season. That's why you have series instead of singular games. So even though a 3-game series is not a good indication of, which team is better, it's a lot better than a one and done, because
I agree.
let's face it, even a team that loses 103 games in a year, they're going to knock off the Yankees a couple times a year. It just happens.
A lot of new rules too. We have that extra inning regular season man on second, and mixed reviews. Me personally, I'd rather see it one on the field. I mean, instead of you might as well just have a home run derby or play rock, paper, scissors or something. Let's play it out. I know they want the game to be faster, but it seems like they're catering to the novice baseball fan, because I like the game just the way it is. I mean, they're tweaking it here and there. The DH to the National League, I think, went over really well. A lot of people say they don't want to see a pitcher up there struggling to hit, but I know it was a big advantage for people like Bob Gibson and Bumgardner, who could actually hit. But hitting pitchers were few and far between, and I do like the DH. A lot of variations in your roster. We can give guys sort of a day off where all they have to do is hit. They don't have to play the field. I kind of like that. Did you like the National League DH?
I did. I was against it for many, many years.
Me too.
I used to like the small ball, and I still do when it's appropriate, but pitchers couldn't bunt anymore. So, and pitchers were such bad hitters with 2 strikes, a manager would just keep a bunt on because he'd rather have him foul it off or bunt through the ball than to, dribble into a double play or something. So I kind of like the designated hitter.
Shohei Ohtani, this is just a special player. We've never seen anything like this. They're always comparing him to Babe Ruth, and Babe was a better pitcher and Babe was a better hitter, but Babe didn't do both at the same time like this. He's the only player under the current rules that qualifies for both a hitter and a pitcher, and he had an incredible year last year. You could argue that he should have been the MVP of the American League. If Judge had 60 home runs, Ohtani would have been the MVP. I believe anyway. His statistics are just phenomenal. Last year he had 666 at bats, and he started 28 games. I got some stats here I could go on and on about Ohtani versus Ruth. And if you compare both of them, Ruth, of course, have played a lot longer, but it's going to take a lot for even Ohtani to catch him in the pitching categories. But doing it both at the same time, I tell you what, if he comes to your city, make it a must to go see this guy, because we may never see the likes of this again. That's just a special player, I believe. The Baltimore Orioles, what a comeback. They are only the 3rd team in Major League history to lose 110 games one year and come back and have a winning record the next year. That it's the third best record by a team that lost 110 games. I don't know how many teams fall under them statistics, but that's pretty impressive. Baltimore, of course, being bad for so long, they got a lot of good young draft choices. They traded away a lot of the older players, and and got some young talent, and they're going to be exciting. I think they're going to give. I'd love to see them give the Yankees and Toronto a run for their money this year. That'd be fun. That's going to be fun. I'm glad baseball's back in Baltimore. Of course, the old St. Louis Browns too. That's good to see. Here's an interesting stat for you. I don't know if you know this, but Justin Verlander won the Cy Young in the American League, but he's the first player ever to do it after not pitching a single inning the year before. That's kind of interesting right there. And so we'll be giving Justin some trouble this year on the new team he's on. Here's a statistic for you. I'm mainly going over just incredible stats because 2022, we're going to look back on this year and remember a lot of great things. But the top two guys that had the most hits in the league came from the same team. And it was Freddie Freeman and Trey Turner. And that is only the fourth time in baseball history that teammates were the top two guys that got hits in the league. The last time it happened was the 1982 Milwaukee Brewers. And we're going to talk about the 82 team and the Cardinal World Series, but it was Yout and Cecil Cooper were the 1-2 combination in 1982. I love that Brewer team. That was a fun team back then. But Freddie Freeman,
Cecil Cooper is so underrated.
I agree.
He was so good, and you never hear him brought up as one of the great players of his era. And he certainly was. Contact hitter who could hit the ball a mile, but he was a line drive hitter. Always had a high batting average, high on base percentage. Just loved the guy.
That was a talented team. That 82 team was stacked. I think if they had a little more pitching, and if Raleigh Fingers hadn't got hurt at the end of the year, things might have ended up different right there. Seattle, baseball's alive and well in Seattle. It's good to see them back on the map. They packed that place. That place was alive. They made the playoffs, and again, they wouldn't have made the playoffs without this new playoff format. And it was just fun seeing Seattle, prominent position again. And they've got a kid up there, Julio Rodriguez, 21 years old, and he had 25 home runs and 25 stolen bases. What a story. This kid can play, and they locked him up for a lot of years. So that's good. A lot of people are comparing him to maybe Ken Griffey Jr. That's not fair to him. But man, he should be the captain of that team coming up in a few years. 21 years old. My God. Vince, what were you doing at 21 years old?
I was in college still.
Yeah. I was.
No, wait a minute. I was playing center field for the Chicago Cubs. I had 25
really?
home runs and stole 28 bases.
Hey,
That's absolutely crazy. That's like me right now doing that.
amazing. And Seattle made it. Well, we won't get into the playoff run, but I was so happy to just see Seattle. I was up there in the Navy, and that's a good city. And, it's more of a football city, but man, they came alive for baseball this year. The Cleveland Guardians, they're the youngest team in the major leagues. I did not know that. I mean, I was reading tons of statistics, but they are the 8th team in Major League history to be the youngest team and make the playoffs. The last team that was the youngest team and made the playoffs was the 1986 New York Mets. With Gooden and Strawberry and Darling and all those guys on the team. So that's pretty cool. That's good to see Cleveland psyched up about baseball. Now, here's something for you Cub fans. Kyle Schwarber, I always thought he's a good hitter. I didn't think he was a good fielder. And he goes to Philadelphia, and he becomes an incredible leadoff hitter. But he's not a typical leadoff hitter. He's not that fast. His batting average was like 216 last year. But he led the league in home runs, and I believe he had 46 home runs and 38 was from the leadoff spot. That's amazing. Is that that is an unlikely strategy. That a guy would normally who would hit number 4 for you would be your leadoff guy. What do you think about that?
The Cubs had him hit leadoff quite a bit because he takes a lot of pitches and he can get his walks. So batting leadoff wasn't new to him. I mean, he never had the monster year that he had last year with the Cubs, but he had great seasons with the Cubs.
Oh yeah, I always thought he was a very good player. I just didn't see him as a leadoff hitter, but he stole 10 bases last year too and got caught once. That's a
Yeah,
pretty
he's
good
an athlete.
He
He's a
sure
big guy,
is.
but he's an athlete.
Yeah, I always
He's got
go
a
for
gun for an arm too. I mean, he's not a great fielder, but you don't try to take an extra base on Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. How's that feel watching one of your I mean, he was on your World Series team, and then there he is with the Phillies winning it again. To me, when the Cardinal player has success, an ex-Cardinal, I kind of feel good about it, unless they leave it under bad circumstances.
How did you feel when Keith Hernandez won the World Series with the Mets?
I felt horrible. All right, you got me on that one. You got me. I felt terrible. Mike Trout. You know, we're going to look back on this guy, and he's probably been the best player in baseball, in my estimation, in probably the last 6-7 years. Last year he was hurt, and he only played 119 games, but he made them count. He hit 40 home runs in 119 games. He's starting to have a few injuries. He's getting into his early 30s now, but he's only the 4th player in 120 games or less to hit 40 home runs. So that's pretty impressive right there. Mike Trout, again, time goes by so quick, and these guys, you think they're going to be around forever, and then their careers are over. But Mike Trout, another great story, and I'd love to see the Angels at least make the playoffs. It's sad that he doesn't even sniff the playoffs, with him and Ohtani on the same team. Let's see. The Braves they've done it a different way than anyone else. Everyone else has augmented their team with these high-priced free agents. The Braves have either made trades or brought up guys from their minor leagues and then kind of give them a long-term contracts. And I tell you what, their farm system is coming through. They had the top 2 guys for the Rookie of the Year last year, Strider, the pitcher, and Harris, the center fielder. And then they let somebody like Swanson go, the shortstop, who I thought, why, he's from that area, but they've got a kid down there. His name is Vaughn Grissom, and he looks like he could be something special. So we'll have to see, because Darby Swanson was a very good shortstop. I'm glad he's on the Cubs now, but we'll have to see about that. And I could go on and on, but I wanted to touch on Sandy Alcantara's season with the Marlins. The Marlins don't get a lot of love, but Sandy Alcantara had an incredible year last year. He had 6 shutout, which you don't see, complete games, which you don't see anymore. You don't see complete games. He threw 229 and 2/3 innings, and that is 23 and 2/3 innings more than any other pitcher in baseball. And that's just a standard that nobody else can hold up to. I hope he can keep it up. The last guy who had that big a lead over total innings over anyone else was 1979. Phil Niekro threw 49 and 2/3 innings more than the second place guys, which was J.R. Richard and El Presidente Dennis Martinez. And of course, I'm a Cardinal fan, and I'm not going to take all day on all these statistics. I just wanted these odd stats to come up, but there was like 3 events that kind of, as a Cardinal fan, you just couldn't forget. And it was Albert coming back home and hitting 700. We said goodbye to Yadier Molina, and then both Wainwright and Yadi breaking that battery record. And I think they're 328's the record right now. And I don't see that. Records are made to be broken, but that's going to be a hard one to break. You're going to have 2 young players stay together for a long time and be very successful to even come close to that.
Yeah.
So, I hope I didn't bore you too much. I could go on and on with all these statistic things, which I absolutely love. And I have like 3 pages, and I probably read a page and a half of them. But that was some of the big stories that really made note for me this year that I'll never forget this season for.
Yeah. Overall, what were your guys' favorite moments from this season?
That's a good.
For me, it's got to be Judge hitting 62, because for me, a guy who's older, who certain records were really idolized when I was a kid, and 61 home runs was one of them. And when it was shattered by McGuire, Sosa, and a few other people who hit that many home runs, Sosa like 60, like 4 or 5 times. And then you found out that they did this cheating. Judge, his body isn't changing. He's a big dude, but that to me seems so legit that I was kind of like, wow, that's incredible. Albert hitting 700, which I really didn't think going into the season is going to end up with, was really cool too.
I like the
Yeah.
Yachty Wayno record. It was fun. Yachty was hurt there for a while, and he was back in Dominican, and I thought, oh, come on, Yachty, we're running out of time. You got to get back up here. We need you. And when they broke it, that was just a special moment. It's teammates and friendship, and I mean, they're going to be linked together for the rest of the time. And I hope to see both of them on that left field wall in St. Louis with Albert. That'll be I don't know. It's going to be fun the next few years when they retire some numbers and put them on the wall. And I love Wayno, but he'll wear the red jacket in St. Louis, but I don't see him in the Hall of Fame unless he goes nuts this year and throws a perfect game or two or something like that, or has a big moment in the World Series. But Yachty and Pujols for sure, and it's going to be kind of a fun time. It was kind of a happy and sad at the same time, but that's probably the biggest moment for me over the year.
Yeah, I mean, those are both great. I guess I'll just kind of start my thing on the postseason. Yeah, with the new format, the wild card series were just really good overall. For like the Guardians Rays series, it was just kind of a pitching, duel for both games, with the only runs in game one being scored via the home run, and then same thing for game two. Which for game two, I remember that was the 15-inning one where it was tied 0-0, and then the SpongeBob guy, Oscar Gonzalez, hit a walk-off home run. I watched that entire game in my living room, and oh wow, it makes you think about maybe the Manfred runner or whatever. Maybe it's not that bad, because that game was brutal to watch. But that series was really entertaining. Obviously, Cardinals Phillies. That was also pretty crazy with the ninth inning comeback, and then the Bryce Harper home run in game two was just absolutely just soul crushing. Not gonna say I wasn't happy that the Cardinals lost, but I don't know.
I understand.
I was indifferent, I guess. Yeah,
I understand.
Maybe next year. Then there was the Blue Jays Mariners series was pretty crazy too. I didn't actually end up watching one of the games, but they came back from that 7-run deficit. They're down 8-1 in like the third inning. Then they came back and won 10-9 in extras. Crazy game. Like every single wild card series had a game like this where it was just back and forth, or just like something absolutely bananas happened. Then for Padres Mets, the Padres went and they just, for Scherzer and for DeGrom, they just teed off of them. I think Scherzer gave up like 5 home runs in his start and was pulled with a 7-1 like deficit. It's very strange. It was a strange series, and honest to God, I'm kind of hoping it happens again this year with the Mets.
Me too.
It's good for teams to spend money, but when they sign all the free agents, I like, Then for the ALDS, the Mariners, their story kind of ended here. So it was a very close sweep. Every single game they had the lead in at some point. In game one, there was the infamous Robbie Ray, giving up the walk-off home run, which was very predictable in retrospect. Then he hits another home run in game two. And then there was another, crazy extra innings game. They basically played 4 games. It was an 18-inning game where they were tied, I think, like 1-1 or something like that. Then, Jeremy Pena, who goes on to win World Series MVP, hits the go-ahead home run in the 18th. I think off of another starting pitcher. You guys have any opinions on that, using your starting pitchers as closers in games like that?
It works sometimes, and I think it just depends on the makeup of the pitcher. Randy Johnson, no problem. I started the day before. Yeah, I'll go out and close this game. Then there are others that just do not want out of that routine, and they can't handle it. But
Yeah.
it goes back to the runner on second row. I'm with you, Max. I like it. I don't see the benefit. After 9 innings, I enjoy an extra inning game, but after about the 11th inning, I've already spent 4 hours watching this game. Somebody do something, So I like the runner on second and just add strategy right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it gives the home team a big advantage, especially when it's a playoff game. If the team in front of you doesn't, if you sacrifice them over, all you need is a sac fly. I understand, but I enjoy a good 2-1 game or 1-0 game more than I do a 10-9 game. Like after you've seen like 6-7 home runs, you're like, all right, it ain't so special. But those 1-0 games where the game can hinge on a error or somebody's trying too hard to make a big play instead of just holding the ball and get them the next time. As far as the pitchers pitching out of the bullpen, I almost think it's a desperate act. You've kind of given up on the guys you have in your bullpen, and you're going to go with your big guy. Of course, he may not be able to come back and pitch, but you got to go. It's all or nothing now. And if it comes through, the pitcher's a legend. I know CC Sabathia did that with the Brewers, and like you said, Randy Johnson, Bob Gibson did that in '64. But if it backfires, all the heat's on the manager now. So it's a gutsy move.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost think it's an act of desperation that you have more faith in that starter than you do the other guys in the bullpen. And in those long games, it's almost who's got the better 24 players, because you're starting to wear them down. Did you go too heavy with your backups early in the game? So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. It's a calculated risk anyway, right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it either goes one way or the other. You can have legendary games like Madison Bumgarner coming into close after pitching like just absolutely insane throughout the entirety of the World Series. You have moments like that. Then you can have the opposite where you're giving up, a walk-off home run. It's also worth noting that in the Guardians 15-inning game, the Rays pitcher was Corey Kluber. So that's another starting pitcher who's thrown in a situation he's not familiar with, and then just immediately loses the game. That was kind of a theme. I saw a lot of discourse on that. But overall, I think a lot of pitchers, especially the Philly starters, they actually ended up kind of going the distance. There were a lot of 6-inning, 7-inning starts. Joe Musgrove had that start against the Mets where they checked his ears, which was
I
very
remember that
funny.
one. Yes.
But yeah, that was 7 innings of 1 hit ball. Luis Castillo had 7 shutout innings. The pitching was really good, especially for the Phillies Cardinal series. Both the Phillies and Cardinal starters, they really hung in there. Was it Quintana game 1 or was he game 2?
I think game 2, but he had a great start.
He still had a great start though. In fact, in my opinion, they probably pulled him almost too early.
Yeah, I think better to be safe than sorry, but maybe it was right. I don't know. I put it in their hands. They know more than I do, but yeah, I'm with you. I think he had another inning in him.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the divisional series for, I guess I skipped the Yankees Guardians. The Yankees, they were down, I think 2-1. They came back and won their series against the Guardians, which I feel like most people would expect that. I mean, when you're a team that young, you don't have the experience necessarily in games like that. I don't know if anyone from their 2016 or 2017 teams is still like producing for them. That's just, I'm not very familiar with that roster, but they do have a lot of young players. So I think going forward, they'll definitely be back, whether it's in, the DS or the CS or even the World Series. They have the pitching and the young talent for it. For the
I like
National
Jose.
League,
I like
was,
Jose Ramirez. I like that kid. Man, he got his
yeah, and they
1,000th
locked him up too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's got, and that's good to see because you want a face of your team, and that guy got his 1,000th hit this year. He's been around a little bit now, and usually the Yankees always have the Indians' number. It always seems like they bounce them anytime they're in the playoffs. They bounce them, but this year looked a little different. It looked like they really give them a run for their money, and the future could be changing here real quick.
Let's see. For the NLDS, it was, I would definitely a couple of upsets with the Padres knocking out the Dodgers, who, 108 or whatever, however many games they win. It's always a lot. They got knocked out, and then the Phillies with their wonderful underdog story, which they won 87 games. That's all you need at this point. And I hope it signals to tanking teams or teams like the Cubs, if you're on that threshold, if you can even push yourself into that 85 to 87 win conversation with, some good luck baked in, you can have yourself a playoff run. You don't need to build a powerhouse team, like the Dodgers, where you're constructed to win, 110 games. So I did like that. That was one of my favorite storylines, I think, from this postseason was the underdog stories of there's two sides to it, because you have the Phillies, who are that story, then you have the Astros, who are that powerhouse team with the pitching and the hitting, and just everything about them is just amazing, stellar defense. Two teams constructed very, very differently, which was fascinating to see in the World Series.
I agree.
Moving on to the ALCS, not much to say here. The Astros absolutely obliterated the Yankees 4-0. They were my pick to win it from before the postseason. I don't know who I picked from the National League to make the World Series, but it wasn't the Phillies. But the way that Astros team is constructed is they're just a well-oiled machine. I mean, two of their guys, I think Framber Valdez and Christian Javier, they signed them for $10,000 out of, the Dominican. That's absolutely crazy. They weren't these overslot, $1 million draft picks. These are guys, for cheap. NLCS, Padres versus Phillies. It was entertaining, I guess. Had to see Juan Soto's defense, which was a Gold Glove nominee, Juan Soto, by the way.
Yeah.
That was fun. There was the Aaron Nola versus his brother.
Oh yeah,
right? What's his name?
Yeah.
He's the catcher. Either way, it was entertaining. I mean, I had the Padres pick to win, but once again, the Phillies, they just had the momentum, the heat. The World Series was it started off very even, but after the no-hitter in game 4, it was just kind of, you could tell that just killed any momentum the Phillies had. And that really just kind of, it's the pinnacle of what the Astros did this postseason, where they just pitched exceptionally well. The only person, funny enough, who had any blow-up starts was Justin Verlander. He got shelled, I think, in his start against the Mariners. But otherwise, all of their guys just absolutely just shoved, basically, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mentioned this on an earlier podcast. I really wish I would have paid more attention to the Astros because of the cheating scandal of a few years ago. I've just mad at him, I guess you could say. But when I watched them in the playoffs, I realized this may be one of the best teams I've ever seen. It may be the best team I've seen. There's just no weakness. And they do it right in that, okay, we need to trim some payroll. That's okay. We can let Carlos Correa walk because we've got a Jeremy Pena coming up. We got a lot of confidence in him. And that's one thing that I like about the Astros. You're talking about the two pitchers that they signed for 10,000, which is pennies.
Yeah.
They understand how to build a team, and then you augment that with free agent parts if you need to. But you build from within, and it's not where you're slotted to draft. It's how good you find talent. And the 10 years ago, the Cubs and the Astros were on the same trajectory. They both peaked, and the Cubs won that first World Series. But the Astros, what they have done is they have done a better job with their scouting department and their pitch lab to sustain it, whereas the Cubs didn't really have much of a plan for pitching. And their scouting, it's not been that good over the past few years. Now it's starting to rebound. So I just wish I would have paid more attention to this Astros team because they are without a weakness.
I think it all starts with Dusty. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to mention that they did fire their GM after building such a well-oiled machine, which is a little strange. But otherwise, yeah, no weaknesses.
I think it all started with Dusty Baker. When all that fell apart for them with the scandal, they brought in Dusty Baker, and he's beloved. He's a beloved baseball long timer. He came in and kind of righted the ship. He's been there. He's been around the game forever. Played for a lot of teams, had a lot of success. I mean, if you look when he started to now, he's been in the game forever. And people were kind of pulling for him. I know I'm a Cardinal fan, you're a Cub fan, but if we're out of it, wouldn't it be nice to see Dusty win one? And then they, like you said, they made good decisions. Correa, any team would love to have a Correa as long as he's healthy and capacity, physical. Springer in center field. That guy's a great player, but they decided move those guys and keep Altuve and Bergman at third. And who would have known they have Kyle Tucker? I think that guy's a superstar in the making. McCormick comes in, and I think he made the defensive play of the playoffs or World Series in my mind when he caught that JT Realmuto shot off the wall. He jumped in there. I don't think he could go any higher. What a year. And like you said, I think the Phillies would have had to play perfection to beat the Astros, and the Astros just had to stay consistent. They didn't sweat it when they got behind. That's a pro team. And you had a nice mixture of veterans, young guys, guys having big years. They look like they're in a good spot for years to come. I really enjoyed the World Series. This was one of my favorite World Series this year, by the way.
It was certainly up there. I liked it more than last year's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Max, let me ask you this. You asked us what our favorite memory of the season was. What was your favorite memory of the season?
I have a couple. They're all Cubs ones. Although I think my overall, my overall favorite part of the season was probably Pujols hitting 700. That was just such a cool thing to be able to witness. Just someone who, almost every single person, including me, had just kind of written off as, this guy's past his prime. He's going to fall short. He had an awesome career, but he absolutely balled out. I mean, it's kind of inspiring. I mean, that was my favorite overall thing. I have a couple of Cubs ones. The Nico Horner opening day home run was so awesome for me. He's my favorite player, and just, with the lockout and finally just having baseball again, for that to happen off of, was it Corbin Burns?
Yeah.
It was just awesome. It was awesome. That was a great start to the season. The Christopher Morel home run in his first at bat was just also amazing. The Seiya Suzuki inside the park home run against Josh Hader. This is right as kind of he fell apart, but oh man, it was a fun season. Obviously, the Cubs didn't win very many games, but the games they did win, which I think that actually ended up losing the Seiya Suzuki game. But it was a fun season overall.
Yeah. Well, we are going to open up baseball cards, and being Max is not opening up cards. Max, I've got Donruss from the early 90s. What do you got, JJ?
Well, this is the first time ever. I'm Donruss 1990.
Okay.
Right there.
Why don't we do this? Max, when we do a card, let us know if you have seen this player play. See if we open up anybody that you actually have seen play, okay?
Like in a live game or in a video?
In a live game, if during your lifetime, so.
All right.
Okay, JJ, you want to go first?
Why, sure. Should I tell them the team name and everything? Oh, yeah. Okay. This is a Met bobbleheater.
No, I have no idea who that is.
You remember
He
bobbleheater?
pitched for the Red Sox too.
Yes. In a lot of World Series. He's been in some World Series games. All right. We've mentioned this guy, Cardinal. I don't know if he was a cover or not, but Jose De Leon.
I have. Yeah, I believe
Okay.
so. Not in like a live game, but I've heard of him, definitely.
Here's a name. I'm betting you know this guy. Pitcher, Toronto Blue Jays at the time, Al Leiter.
Oh yeah.
Yes. He's the father of the there's a Rangers prospect.
Yes, one of the top prospects in all of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Philadelphia Phillies catcher, Steve Lake.
Former Cub.
Oh,
I have heard of him.
All right. I'm impressed. I'll be honest with you. I know very little. I'm an old man and I remember him. All right. This is the Cleveland Indians at the time. Pitcher Steve Olin.
No, doesn't ring a bell.
Now, was he one of the ones that was killed in that boating accident in the early 90s? Roger McDowell?
You may be right, because I remember that I knew the name for some reason, but I believe you might be right on that one.
Yeah,
my gosh.
He died when he was 27. So yes,
Yeah.
I believe so.
I'll be darned. All right. Shortstop, Detroit Tigers, Alan Trammell.
Very good player.
Very good player. You think we're going to see Whitaker in the Hall of Fame?
I hope.
I hope so too.
He should be.
I think so too. Let's see here. Oh, we almost every week we run across this guy. San Francisco Giant, Kevin Mitchell.
Keep popping up.
That's funny. Because what if you guys pulled him? And I did look up his baseball reference page. He had a decent career.
Oh yeah.
34 home runs.
I'm telling you, the Giants used to be bad to the bone. You had to get through Matt Williams, Will Clark, and Kevin Mitchell. And one of my greatest memories was there's a foul ball. Mitchell's in left field and he overran it, and he reached up with his bare hand and caught the foul ball barehanded.
He won an MVP.
He did.
Yeah.
See it now.
Pretty impressive.
You know more about him than I do.
I'm looking at his baseball reference page. That's how I know
that. All right. Oh, well, speak of the devil. Gary Gaetti from the Twins.
I actually did look up his page when we were talking about him earlier. He was a below average hitter, but he actually did have a couple of good seasons, and he had like 40 WAR, which is that's a good career.
His best years were with the Twins.
Oh yeah.
And then he went to the Angels and the Royals and was kind of falling apart. Then the Cardinals and Cubs but when he was with the Twins, he was an all-star.
He was a big part of that.
There's from Centralia, Illinois.
Look at that.
Home of the Orphans.
You learned the Orphans.
That's their high school mascot, the Orphans.
I mean, that's kind of a sad orphan, to be honest. I'm not intimidated by the Orphans. All right. Third baseman, Oakland A's, Carney Lansford.
And we had him last week.
That's right.
Won a batting title.
And finally, Detroit Tiger, first baseman, Dave Bergman.
Yes. I remember Dave.
Nice career. I think he had some big years with some successful teams. He was a big part of the top guy off the bench on a lot of successful teams. All right, well, that's my pack right there.
Okay, I am opening up. This is earlier, and I thought it's an 88 Dondros.
Ooh.
And Dondros had the puzzles going at that time, and their puzzle for this year was Stan the Man. So there's Stan the Man's waistline. Okay.
All
For
right.
those of you who are interested. Max, I know you've heard of this guy, the lead singer of The Doors, Jim Morrison.
Very funny.
One of my favorite pictures because he looks so unathletic. Kent Tekulve.
Kent Tekulve, submarine pitcher.
Yeah, when he retired, he's about 6'4" and about 140 pounds. When he retired, he had appeared in more games than I think any other pitcher in baseball. I think that's been broke since. Oh my gosh, we have another Steve Lake. And this is when he was with the Cardinals.
Steve Lake, he's all over the place.
So Max, I know you've heard of him because you just heard of him.
Yeah.
Mickey Brantley. Don't know who he is. Oh, JJ. It's got to bring back a lot of memories.
All right.
The man passed away too soon. Bob Forsch.
Oh, Bob Forsch. He threw out a first pitch in the 2011 World Series, and he died with a week later. 2 no-hitters.
Yeah.
Threw 2 no-hitters, and actually was a very good hitter too.
Yeah, I think he started in the minors as a third baseman, something like that. Oh, the second greatest Royal, Frank White.
Frank White. They got his number retired out there.
And here's a gentleman who, for a few years, was like MVP material, and then he just fell off the face of the earth. Mike Greenwell.
Oh
Yeah, with
yeah.
the Red Sox.
The Red Sox come up with hitters. Man, they come up with some of the best hitters.
Here's a guy, Guy Hoffman. See what I did there? Oh, and this guy, I'm sure, is still playing at the age of 93, Julio Franco.
He looked good for a 53-year-old man. He was fit.
Oh, former catcher for the Phillies and Guardians, and at this time with the Reds, Bo Diaz, who had the nickname Cannon because of his arm.
I remember Bo.
A good left-handed pitcher who became a really good manager, Bud Black.
Oh, yeah.
Hall of Famer, Lee Arthur Smith.
Cub and a Cardinal.
Oh, and here's the ageless one, Don Sutton, who got into the Hall of Fame.
Great player.
Jeff Ballard.
I honestly don't remember Jeff Ballard.
Don't either. Oh, and here's the pride of Arkansas. What part of Arkansas is he from? Little Rock. Kevin McReynolds played for the Blazing Nets. Yeah.
Oh yeah. A duck hunter. He's a big duck hunter.
He in the '84 World Series, the only game that the Padres won against the Tigers, McReynolds hit a home run in that game. Yeah. So
nice career. Had a nice career.
Yeah, good guy. Good guy. Well, that wraps up our last show of 2022. We do want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, we have Patreon coming up. Tell your friends. We need more subscribers. We want to make this so big that when we die, we'll be put on our tombstones. So thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.